Coming up on 5 Minute News. Debt ceiling meeting ends without agreement. Eugene Carroll to sue Trump for additional $10 million. And Brazil declares health emergency amid avian flu cases. It's Tuesday, May 23. I'm Anthony Davis. President Joe Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy ended discussions on Monday with no agreement on how to raise the U.S. government's $31.4 trillion debt ceiling, and will keep talking with just 10 days before a possible default that could sink the U.S. economy. The Democratic president and the top congressional Republican have struggled to make progress on a deal, as McCarthy blackmails the White House to agree to spending cuts in the federal budget that Biden considers extreme. They have just 10 days to reach a deal until June 1st to increase the government's self-borrowing limit or trigger an unprecedented debt default that economists warn could bring on a recession. Biden said before the meeting started that he was optimistic they could make some progress. Both sides need a bipartisan agreement to sell it to their constituencies, he said, adding there may still be some disagreements. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on Monday offered a sobering reminder of how little time is left, saying the earliest estimated default date remains June 1st and that it's highly likely that Treasury would no longer be able to pay all of government's obligations by early June if the debt ceiling is not raised. White House aides met with Republican negotiators on Capitol Hill for 2 hours yesterday, and early indications were that talks had gone well. Any deal to raise the limit must pass both chambers of Congress and therefore hinges on bipartisan support. McCarthy's Republicans control the House 222 to 213, while Biden's Democrats hold the Senate 51 to 49. A failure to lift the debt ceiling would trigger a default that would shake financial markets and drive interest rates higher on everything from car payments to credit cards. Writer Eugene Carroll sought on Monday to amend the first of her 2 defamation lawsuits against the disgraced former President Donald Trump to demand at least $10 million in additional damages, citing comments he made on the CNN town hall after a jury found him liable for sexually abusing her. The federal jury in Manhattan on May 9 found Trump sexually abused Carroll in the 1990s and then defamed her by lying about it in October 2022. The jury ordered him to pay Carroll $5 million in damages. Trump has appealed the verdict and has called Carroll's claims a complete con job. On Monday, Carroll's lawyers pointed to Trump's posts on Truth Social, calling the verdict a disgrace, and criticism of Carroll on CNN on May 10 in arguing that she should be allowed to amend her earlier lawsuit, which alleges Trump defamed her by denying the incident in 2019 comments whilst he was president. Trump's defamatory statements post-verdict show the depth of his malice toward Carroll, since it is hard to imagine defamatory conduct that could possibly be more motivated by hatred, ill will, or spite, her lawyers wrote. This conduct supports a very substantial punitive damages award. During the CNN town hall the day after the verdict, Trump said he never met this woman and called Carroll's account a fake, made-up story invented by a whack job. Those statements are the basis of Carroll's new filings. Carroll's lawyers said in a letter to U.S. District Judge Lewis Kaplan on Monday that because Trump's alleged defamatory statements were essentially the same, the only open issues were whether he was immune for making the first statement, and if not, what damages he owes. The Brazilian government on Monday formally declared a state of animal health emergency for 180 days in response to the detection, for the first time in the country, of the highly pathogenic avian influenza virus in wild birds, according to a document signed by the Agriculture Minister Carlos Favaro. Infection by the H5N1 subtype of avian flu in wild birds does not trigger trade bans based on guidelines of the World Organization for Animal Health. However, a case of bird flu on a farm usually results in the entire flock being slaughtered and can trigger trade restrictions from importing countries. Brazil is the world's largest chicken meat exporter, with $9.7 billion in sales last year. Brazil has so far confirmed 5 cases of the N5N1 in wild birds, including 4 in Espírito Santo state and 1 in Rio de Janeiro state. 3 of the 4 cases in Espírito Santo were confirmed in coastal cities of that state, while 1 was not, suggesting the risk of contagion inland has risen. Though Brazil's main meat-producing states are in the south, the government is on alert after the confirmed cases, as avian flu in wild birds has been followed by transmission to commercial flocks in some countries. Over the weekend, the Health Ministry said samples of 33 suspected cases of avian influenza in humans in Espírito Santo, where Brazil confirmed the first cases in wild birds last week, came back negative for the H5N1 subtype. 2 other suspected cases are still being investigated. You can subscribe to the 5-Minute News Patreon for bonus videos, commentary, and more. Go to patreon.com/5minutenews.